Hello, my name's Ian Seeger from Pilot Career News. On the 6th and 7th of November, we held our very first virtual edition of Pilot Careers Live. We streamed over 30 different seminars with 60 speakers. There were 2 days packed full of great information. Of course, we recorded everything, and you're about to watch one of the videos from the event. Before you do, I just want to thank our sponsors, Bose, Alsim, Entro, and of course Pulis. Without them and without the exhibitors, it wouldn't be possible. The exhibitor pages are still live, so feel free to head on over there. Go to www.pilotcareerslive.com and click through to the exhibitors. There's loads of information, loads of downloads, all sorts of great stuff there for you. Anyway, enjoy the video, and if you find it useful, really appreciate it if you click subscribe on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello everybody, welcome to our second session of the morning. We're delighted to have with us here today Glenn Bradley, Head of Flight Operations from the UK CAA. I'll just do a brief introduction of Glenn so that you know a little bit more about him, and then hand over to him. He's going to talk to you for approximately the next 20 minutes. So Glenn, as Head of Flight Operations, Glenn's responsible for the oversight of both commercial and non-commercial aircraft operations, approved training organisations and special operations across the UK. His role includes maintaining the UK's excellent aviation safety record and making improvements for all airspace users. Glenn initially joined the Royal Air Force flying the iconic Tornado aircraft in 1987 and flying in operational theatres of northern and southern Iraq. He then returned his skills as a pilot to commercial aviation, flying both the 737 and Airbus A320 families for GB Airways. He has more than 9,000 hours of commercial flying time. Glenn transitioned into flight management at GB Airways and then transferred to EasyJet following his acquisition of the airline. He moved to the Civil Aviation Authority in 2017. His personal interest in flying continues as an active general aviation pilot, previously owning several aircraft and retaining a share in a Beagle Pup aircraft at Redhill Aerodrome. He's also a keen sailor and has travelled widely over his career. Glenn, over to you on the 2021 and beyond. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thanks for that lovely introduction. That saves me having to talk about myself, which obviously makes people feel somewhat uncomfortable, so thank you for that. First, I'd just like to thank you for this great opportunity. Everybody keeps talking about unprecedented times and obviously using this forum to be able to reach out to everybody and hopefully provide some information of use and some guidance and direction is a great opportunity for us, and it's very difficult. So as Karen says, I've been with the CAA now for 3 years, and 9 years at EasyJet before that, 9 years with GB Airways before that, and I think I was flying the Tornado for 9 years. So there's a kind of pattern to my career, and I'll talk about kind of how I got into it in the first place. But I think just from a Civil Aviation Authority perspective, I think there's a few kind of myths that I probably need to dispel. We are the regulator has changed a lot over the years, and obviously being under EASA for quite a few years now, that kind of changed the direction, and how we interact with industry and how we work with industry has changed over that period as well. So we're in a kind of different place, and obviously we're just heading into another phase with Brexit coming up and becoming a standalone regulator, which will make some changes as well. And I'll come back to that shortly. But just to go back to Karen's point about my point about how I got into it, because this is fundamentally about pilot careers. If I think back, and I hate to use dates because it makes me feel very old, but if I think back to 1986 when I kind of looked at this, finished university, and it was the year that British Airways started their cadet scheme. We started their cadet scheme after they shut down Hamble, and so I sat there with an application form for the Royal Air Force and an application form that the BA cadet scheme, filled them both in, and then BA decided that they were going to delay their scheme by a year, and the Air Force said, "You're in." So that's what drove my career the way it went, and I have to say, I have been exceptionally lucky, not only to have the opportunities I've had, but to find the career path that I've had and to end up where I am now. And I just and unfortunately in this industry, the luck does play a big part in it, as well as timing, and that's one of the very difficult things to predict. And on that, the industry is incredibly cyclic, and you'll see if you look at any data, any graphs, anything about this, it goes through cycles, and it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time and being able to see that. the industry also kind of forces itself to be cyclic. So if you go back to the last downturn of 2008 with the financial crisis, if you were working for a public company, as I was at the time, the business will have to do things to demonstrate to its investors that it's doing the right things to protect the company and their investments. So you probably find they take more radical action, and then on the other side, on the flip side of the upturns, they'll look to expand quicker, they'll look to do more. So the industry kind of drives itself to be very cyclic, because if they don't expand, when things are good, if they don't expand and fill in, then somebody else is going to take that opportunity and take business away from them. So from that point of view, it's kind of a tricky industry, and it does go through these cycles. But it does bounce back because of the nature of it. So obviously we find ourselves in one of these cycles at the moment. It's slightly different to the previous ones, where if you look at SARS or 2008 or even 9/11, which were kind of a very much a U-shaped dip, where things dropped off for 3 months and then picked back up again. This is a bit more of it's certainly not V-shaped. Certainly, we hope it's going to be U-shaped, but it's a bit L-shaped at the moment. And if you look at the predictions of how it's going to build up, we started with the restart. It was looking like we were going towards the more optimistic predictions. We're now kind of following the more pessimistic predictions, and obviously this is driven by the second wave, restrictions on travelling, and all the rest of it. And I think the big point here is to understand that the industry is really struggling at the moment. And when I say the industry, I'm talking about the airline industry. Other parts of the industry are doing somewhat better. In my role, I oversee both fixed wing and helicopter, and my helicopter colleagues, they've never been busier. There's lots more work going on in that area. So I think, and also some of the biz jets as well, and that's quite specific. I mean, talking to the colleagues in that area recently, they were saying, well, it's almost a kind of the smaller end of the biz jet market, not the long haul and stuff, is far busier than it has been. So it's not all doom and gloom, but I think that the whole industry is looking to how it's going to survive, and they're still in a lot of survival mode at the moment, and then what the restart's going to look like. I think the big thing here is, if you look at the predictions, and if you listen to people, and some of this will be very much my own opinion, is that how much the industry is going to bounce back. And everybody says, well, we're on Zoom at the moment, so nobody's going to have to travel for business because everybody's doing it virtually. Well, I think we said this back in 9/11. I know the technology has moved on a lot, but I think there will be a demand, and I think the recent experience over half term with the government taking the Canary Islands off the list requiring quarantine on returning, there is a pent-up demand there. People want to travel, they want to go on holiday. So once we get into a more stable situation, be it with steady state with either the quarantine or the removal of quarantine or test and release, whatever it happens to be, and hopefully, fingers crossed, a vaccine, then the demand will be there, and I think people start travelling again. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get back to the 2019 figures, but I think with those things, there will be. I think will take us away from the more pessimistic line, and things will start to pick up more quickly. Hopefully, that's very much kind of my opinion, and being an eternal optimist. So from that point of view, and certainly from a pilot career point of view, as I said at the start, it's all about timing. So if you're looking at the lead time for pilot training for commercial pilots being 18 months to 2 years, now is a surprisingly good time to actually start looking into this, because you need to be in the right place when the upturn happens, when the industry is looking to take pilots into the system. So it's probably not a bad time. Also, incidentally, it's probably not a bad time to actually start an airline as well, because there's cheap pilots out there, there's cheap aircraft out there, fuel's cheap, and there will be a demand coming back again, and you won't, a new operator, you wouldn't have the legacy issues of the issues that you've had so far. So moving away from the COVID thing, so that's hopefully that's a kind of a quick view on where we are. And as an authority, what we're doing, we're desperately trying to support the industry and kind of changing how we interface with the industry and trying to do what we can, be that through exemptions or to allow them to continue to operate and look at new ways of doing things. Obviously ensuring that safety is there, because that's our role, but we're very much in a kind of supporting role at the moment. Obviously, the next thing that's going to come around is Brexit, and that's looming up very quickly. The Brexit situation, obviously, everybody sees in the news what's going on with the negotiations, and it's very difficult to work out, even from where we sit, exactly what's going on. We're very much not in control of our industry from that side of things. It's a government negotiation, so we take what the negotiations will give us, and this unfortunately creates a degree of uncertainty. But there is some level of certainty so far. And just to cover that, the legal situation in place at the moment means that we will accept any certificates, licenses, or approvals that have been issued by the EASA prior to the 1st of January 2021. We will accept them for a period of up to 2 years, as long as they remain valid, and we'll treat them as they're issued by the UK. So just to clarify what that means, if you have a European flight crew license issued before the end of the year, we will accept that, so you'll be able to fly GU-age aircraft. There'll be a blanket validation for everybody with a European license, and when you come to renew your LPC annually, that's not a license certificate or approval, so that will still account as well. So your license being non-expiring European license will be valid to use on GU-age aircraft for the whole of the 2-year period. If you're a type rating instructor or examiner, which has a European type rating instructor or examiner, where that has an expiry period of 3 years, if that falls within the 2 years, you'll only get up until the point when it expires. Then you would have to have a UK TOI or TOE issued. And just to explain the 2-year validation thing, the idea of the 2-year validation period is to allow you time to be issued, to get a UK license issued, because at the end of the 2 years, you will, if you want to operate European and GU-age aircraft, you will need a European and a UK license, the same way as you would with the FAA license at the moment. So that's where we are with that. Now, from a kind of commercial operations point of view, as far as safety, licensing, that's concerned, it doesn't create us a lot of headaches. We have protocols in place for reissuing licenses, issuing license off European. The difficult side comes, I think, is very much the commercial side, where there isn't necessarily going to be a level playing field that we would like. In fact, there isn't a level playing field when it comes to licenses, because Europe and the EASA, or even any of the member states, haven't said that they will accept a UK license to fly European aircraft. So we're very much on a one-way thing with that. And the reason behind that is that the government's intention was to allow as much workforce, access to workforce as possible for the UK industry, rather than restricting it. So and allowing that period of transition. So from the Brexit point of view, yes, the industry will change and it will develop, certainly in that 2-year period. But from our point of view as an authority, there's various schools of thought. There's part of the world is out there thinking, well, fantastic, you can go and do exactly what you want and change the rules and do something different to Europe. There's another part saying, especially with the group operations that we oversee, saying please don't change anything, because we have various armed group entities in Europe, and we don't want to be doing something different. So they'd rather we didn't change anything. So from the commercial aspect, we won't be looking at changing anything particularly quickly. The only things that we might be doing is looking at things like acceptable means of compliance and guidance material, where we might be a bit more flexible and pragmatic, or take a slightly different view on that, which doesn't involve rulemaking. So it's it's an easier process to do, and it will hopefully facilitate more of what the industry wants to do. So moving on in the last couple of minutes to the kind of outlook and how I see the world, and what advice I would give to anybody that's coming into the industry or looking for a pilot career. There's a few things here. As I said before, I think it's not a bad time to start looking at this. If you're talking about a 2-year lead time, then 2021 to 2023, 24, then that's probably a good time to actually start coming out of the training courses and into the environment, which will obviously look very different for several reasons, because of the bounce back, which will hopefully happen, and because of post-Brexit, and we'll actually be out of the 2-year validation period by then, so that might look slightly different. So there's going to be a lot of evolution, but would not only be a good time to start getting into it, it would be it's also a great career to be in as well. I think the other dampener on the whole thing is there's a lot of pilots out there that, some have lost their jobs, looking for jobs. So there's quite a bit that needs to be absorbed fairly quickly, and I think that will probably put people off, understandably. And I think we need to see how that's going to develop. And that's a very difficult one to predict as well, and that comes down to kind of market forces and how the world reacts. But in saying that, as I said to start with, and just to close off, I've been exceptionally lucky in the opportunities I've had, things I've managed to do, where I've managed to end up, and it is potentially a very rewarding career, and there's lots of different aspects to it. It's not just about the airlines. There's the corporate world, there's the rotary world, and that's offshore, onshore, HEMS, police. There's many different aspects to commercial flying, and all of it can be exceptionally rewarding, both personally and hopefully kind of financially as well. So on that note, and looking at the time, I'll wrap it up there, and I'll look forward to taking some questions in the Q&A session. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Q&A page.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have a look.
Well,
Whilst you've been chatting, but we'll put those into the Q&A panel, which is about to kick off in just a second. I'm conscious also that Glenn has to head off, so we'll try and get onto your questions first off. But thanks very much for your time. I'm going to hand over to the team who will take over on the Q&A panel just now, and I'll see you in just 1 second.